Right on. Well, it's good to see everybody. I mean, I can't see you, but you can see me. And so I'm going to ask Amanda also when I need to start wrapping up within about 5 minutes. Will you please chat down there or open up the mic? Okay, now I should not be muted. That's better. Okay, I should just use sign language. Yeah. Okay. So that's good to see everybody. How many people, Amanda, do we have in the room? How many people do we have in the room? And while she's typing that, I'll just like to say welcome and get started. What we're going to do is we're going to look at a technical introduction. Oh, great. That's awesome. 40 people. Technical introduction to the EC Console Storm device. So we're going to look at that right now. Let's get started. Since we lost a little time, I will try to make it up. The Storm is a mobile security toolkit. It has many different capabilities. It is a fully loaded pen testing platform, and it's one that has a keyboard, a carry case. When you get it, we actually ship a T-shirt with it and everything. It's a very nice little tool. I'm going to shift my camera to be a little bit bigger here, and I want to just show it to you. I have it right here. All right, and I have it connected wirelessly. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Here's the back of the device. I have an extra antenna on there so that I can appropriately capture packets. But we'll talk about that a little bit as we get deeper into this presentation. So this device is rather amazing, and we use it for quite a lot of things. What we're going to look at in this presentation is we're going to start with just an introduction to hacking so that you can understand some of the roles that the Storm uses. How does it participate in hacking? Then we're going to explain the Storm itself shortly. Then we're going to look at the technology behind the Storm. And these sections we're going to collapse a little bit for the sake of time. And then we're going to look at the Storm in professional pen testing. And we're going to take some time and look at what you can do with the Storm in its various roles. We're going to also have a short look at the Storm in cybersecurity education, in exam preparation, and then some best practices when using the Storm. One thing you'll see at the bottom left-hand side of this section here is this little logo that says Certified Ethical Hacker version 10. EC Council has recently released version 10, and I'm going to be borrowing from some of that material, so you get a little teeny sneak peek at some of that material. I'm going to be borrowing from some of it, talking about the Storm Mobile Hacking Toolkit. So let's just get a little introduction to hacking. Now, I am assuming that we have a fairly high degree of technical competence in this room. Okay, so if not, if you're just kind of new to technology, I'm going to try to explain some of the terminology, but I'm going to assume we have a fairly technical savvy audience, and that's where I'm going to go. All right, so let's get started with what in the world is hacking, and this is very important. What are the motives, goals, and objectives for information security attacks? Now, what we look at when a computer gets attacked, when some actor comes in and does some type of attack on a device, they have a motive, and then they use a method to exploit a vulnerability. So they target systems. They exploit vulnerabilities that are already existing in systems. When you look at a typical computer system, it has a lot of layers, a lot of protocols, and a lot of applications. And there are literally thousands. If you look at the combinations, there are hundreds of thousands of combinations of protocols, of operating systems, of applications that run within the operating system, that are added to the operating system. And all of these are vulnerable in one way or another. One of the things that I like to say is I've seen the future, and it's hackable. Every new thing that's introduced, whatever is going to be introduced tomorrow, is hackable. And so hackers have a desire to disrupt your business, steal information, propagate beliefs, damage reputation, take revenge, etc. There are many, many different reasons, even beyond this, for people to hack. So it's exploiting vulnerabilities, compromising those security controls, modifying the system. That's another thing that hackers do, is modify, change that system to achieve their goals. And hacking can steal, pilfer, redistribute intellectual property, leading to business loss in the tune of multiple billions of dollars over a span of time. Now, not all hackers are alike. So we have black hat hackers who are out there in organized crime specifically to steal and break things. Right? A white hat hackers, which is what I do, which is somebody who is actually paid to test the responses of a system to make sure that they are compliant with that organization's needs, and that we patch up any holes that there would be there. Now, if somebody does that in the day, and at night they're working for a crime syndicate, then they're what we call a gray hat hacker. All right, so we also have things like suicide hackers that we see right here, right? We have script kiddies, and which are people that just go on YouTube and watch a few videos, and from there, wow, I can run an attack on something. Cyber terrorists, state-sponsored. If a country like Russia or China or the United States, yes, we hack a lot of countries too. We would hack for a specific purpose, just like they do, to steal our data. We steal their stuff too. Hacktivists and many other reasons for hacking. So there are several different hacking phases, and we're going to look at some of those phases just very briefly, because what we'll find is that the storm right down here is relevant and useful for each of these phases. Number one, we have the reconnaissance phase, where the hacker will gather information. This includes everything from dumpster diving to low-level scans. There is both passive reconnaissance, where you don't directly interact with the target, you just gather information. All right, so if you dumpster dive, like for instance, after an office is cleaned, there are papers, right, that are sitting around, they get thrown away. Those papers have information on them that we can gather. Right? The storm can't help in that, but it can sure help with searching public records, perhaps. But I would rather do that on my desktop or on a laptop than use the storm, because it's really made for specific purposes. But when you do active reconnaissance, the storm is very good for active reconnaissance, interacting with that target directly in many different ways, from phone calls, that's not the storm, to things like we would do in the scanning phase, where we would scan the network. We would scan the network. We would scan ports. We would scan to extract information. One of the main things that we're looking for, we'll see in just a moment with the storm, is we're looking for live machines. We want port numbers. Why do we want port numbers? Because let me ask you a question. Now, I know that you maybe, I can't hear you, but if I scan and I find that on a device port 80 is open, what is behind that device? Say it out loud. What is it? You know, yes, it's a web server. Like what? What type of web server? Apache, right? IIS, and many other Linux web servers out there. There could be a web server behind there, right? So depending on the port that I find, I can then go into what's called banner grabbing and grab information about the specific, what version of Apache is it running? What version of IIS? And depending on the version, then I know what specific hacks I can use. Like for instance, on the storm, I can use Metasploit, and there are specific hacks that are already built in that I can use against specific types of machines with versions, etc. So that's why we want to extract information during the scanning phase. So let's go back one. We had the reconnaissance phase. Now we have the scanning phase. The next phase is gaining access. So once I find out that there is a specific web server running, And this specific web server, I've scanned apps related to that web server, and I find a vulnerability. Perhaps that web server has a form that has not been checked, and I know that I can do some type of use one of the form fields to do one of various types of hacks, like a SQL injection or others, to gain access to a system, open up a prompt in that system, get a user account on that system, escalate privileges so that I can either go up to become an administrator or root, right? Or I can go sideways because this particular account has access to another resource that I need access to. I can do password cracking, and we're going to talk about that with the Storm too. There's some. The Storm is a very small form device, and we're not going to do the password cracking with the Storm, but we can grab those hashes of those passwords and then send them off somewhere else and have them crunched, and then use the Storm once we've found the passwords we're looking for. But we'll talk about that in just a moment. Then the next thing we have that the hacker's going to do is maintain that access. Install a rootkit or a Trojan, manipulate data. We're going to then cover our tracks so that if the organization wants to try to find out if they've been hacked, they look at their logs, no trace. They look at their the list of processes running, no extra processes running, but yes, I have 100% control and access to that system. So hacking is necessary. This is not something that we want to get rid of. Now, at least not on the white hat hacker side. It's necessary. To beat a hacker, you have to think like one. Imagine this. Imagine that there is a large area, park, open area near your house. And as it turns out, several people have been attacked, and you don't want to be a victim. So you enroll in your dojo, right? Or you go to learn Kung Fu, or you go to learn Krav Maga or something like that. So you're practicing, right? You're learning elbow strikes and punches, and you're learning a lock hold and to put people in a sleeper hold, right? You are maybe you go into professional wrestling. I don't know what it is that you do, but why do you do this? It is not because you want to go and attack people. Not at all. You might even go to a gun range or something like that. It's not because you want to shoot people. It's because you want to be able to defend, and that's what it's talking about. So if you're out there jogging and somebody jumps you and you go, you just take them down, right? And then you get on your phone and call the cops, and you are not attacking them. You're defending because you learned the techniques that they are using. And that's what we do here. We learn the techniques that all the bad guys are using, and then when they try to attack our systems, we use the white hat hacking Kung Fu against them, right? Defend our systems, safeguard our customers' data, avoid security breaches. And one of the areas that we really need to focus on in terms of hacking is there's just such a powerful computer, a hypercomputer, one that has amazing interconnects and flexibility, but it can be hacked very easily. And that is the computer between your ears. That's right, this one right in here, your brain. And so we need to make sure that we shore up the defenses there with security awareness. The Storm cannot help with security awareness, but it's good to say. Anyway, let's now talk about what we want to do with the Storm. So let's talk about what the Storm is. The Storm is mobile security toolkit, fully loaded with pen testing tools. What tools are there? Well, let's just have a look. I'm not going to go to the Storm itself right now, but I'm going to go to my desktop here and show you some of the tools that you'll find. Most of you are familiar. In fact, how many of you use or have used Kali Linux? Let's get a show of hands. Amanda, have a look at that. If you've used Kali Linux, then you're somewhat familiar with what the Storm has in it, because it has a stabilized distro of Kali on it. Let's go over here to my virtual PC, and here's Kali. If for those of you who are in the security, education security community, and you've used Kali before, you know that when you go to any of these applications, let's say that you are a person who uses, oh, there it goes. It's pretty slow here. You use like Nikto, right, or Nmap. I use Nmap a lot, or ZenMap, or you use tools for password attacks, like for instance, John the Ripper, or you use Offcrack, or which I don't use very much. Or you use some wireless tools, like one of the ones I use the most here is AirCrack NG. Use any of these tools. These are the same tools that you'll find on the Storm, and more, by the way. We add more to it. And then what happens is you do an update of Kali. How many of you have done an update of Kali and then found that your tools that you use are now broken? That happens, right? So what we do with the Storm is we go through each of the tools, especially the ones that we use in our hacking classes, and we make sure that they run. And then what we do is we have images for the Storm that you can download, just like you would go to Microsoft to get a new operating system, or if you're running Red Hat, right, you wouldn't go to the Linux community to get a new upgrade. You would go to Red Hat because they take that Linux version and they take care of it. So that's what we're doing with Kali. We're taking care of it. It's almost like our own distro. In fact, we're developing one. So so the same tools that you have here, all for password attack, reverse engineering, exploit, sniffing, etc., they're all on the Storm. And so so for the Storm, let's close this out here. For the Storm, it's versatile and it's Raspberry Pi base. And we do that for maximum flexibility, which we'll talk about in just a few moments. What can you hack with a Storm? Well, you have all the tools we talked about. AirCrack NG for doing packet sniffing, web cracking, Burp Suite to test your web applications. We have Cisco Global Explorer, EtherCap for man-in-the-middle stuff, John the Ripper, Maltego, Kismet, etc., and a lot more. These are just some of the ones we use the most. Metasploit, we use that a lot for specific types of hacks for specific types of systems. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the technology of the Storm. It's Raspberry Pi 3. We are currently developing 3B, 64-bit quad, 7-inch LCD touchscreen display, wireless card, portable, 100 megabits per second, 4 USB ports, small form factor. All the hacking tools are ready, very low power consumption. So one of the reasons for the Storm is if you look at its size, its relative size here. So here it is, compared to my hand. Here it is compared to my face. So it's a small form factor. If you can imagine, a lot of people have their own hacking laptops. I'm just jumping out of the frame here for a second. So here I have a laptop, right? And I have my own hacking laptop. If I'm at a customer site, I'm not going to leave my laptop necessarily at the customer site. It's just big, bulky, and I use it for other things. But if I have a device like the Storm, and I'm running some red team types of tests for ingress or egress through the network, I would be able to leave it there and remote into it and work from there. So it's very nice to sneak it behind the line, so to speak, and use it from there. So very nice for that. It's 64-bit, 1 gigabyte of RAM. So it's not something that you are going to use for anything that requires a whole lot of RAM, but it works great for its purposes. Wireless, built-in Bluetooth, etc. Have a look at those. Trying to go through some of these things so I'll have time to do the rest of what we are going to be doing today. So, so cool stuff. And I'm going to see what Amanda says here. Oh, great. Okay, good. All right, so very good. So you can see the storm right there. Very good. You can mimic some of the things I'll be doing here in a little while here. So there are a lot of technical details in terms of the chipset, etc., how the UART works and HDMI out, etc. I'm not going to spend too much time on the pinouts for the header for the MPIO, but this is something that we talk about in some of our storm seminars and so on. Really, you want to we'll talk about this in a little while, but you create your own storm mobile testing lab. We'll talk about when that's appropriate as we move forward. Where can you use the storm? You can use it in the classroom. We're going to talk about these cases for the storm also. For business or even on the road, we have a Gale Force 10 expansion pack that also includes, this is a little Hutu. What this does is it's a little wireless access. What it does, it'll clone your wireless access, so I can get I can attach it to the wireless access that is at a hotel or whatever, and then connect my storm to its wireless access or wired access if I want, which is right here, right? And make my own network with my storm laptop, my VMs, etc. I can power it off of the little battery pack. We have a lot of other devices in the expansion pack, which I'm not going to go into right now. But let's get into the heart of this seminar, which is the storm in professional pen testing. So that's what we're going to look at, some of the things that you can do with it. And to do that, I need to talk about some of the methods and some of what needs to be accomplished when you are doing professional pen testing. The first thing is footprinting. Footprinting is the first step of any attack, right? And it collects information about the target network, talks about different ways to intrude into them, passive and active footprinting. We talked about that a little bit already, where we gather organization, network, and system information. The storm can be used for part of that. But it's not its primary role. Primary role comes in the next part of it, which is we'll talk about in a moment. But it can be used in footprinting. We'll talk about how it can be. We want to know the security posture of the organization, find out what they have open, what they have closed, what serious work they've done with security, what areas to focus on. One of the biggest parts of hacking is narrowing the focus. Right? If somebody is using a Class A RFC 1918 address, do I want to scan the entire Class A range? Are you kidding me? That could take a long time. But if I find out that they're using Class A RFC 1918 address and it's 10.15.15, I only have 256 hosts to scan now. If they're on 10.15.15.15 with a 24-bit mask, right? I only have 254 hosts to scan. Whereas if I scan the entire range, it's millions of potential hosts, actually more than millions. So want to reduce that. Identify the vulnerabilities of the system. Again, this is going to be accomplished through many different ways, like, for instance, banner grabbing. And as we make our way through the network, we make a little map, find out where we want to attack first, etc. And now this is where the storm comes in. Right? We go to the next phase, which is network scanning. We want to identify hosts on the network. Remember, especially if you're doing a black box. Let's see, how many of you are familiar with the term black box versus white box? Make a note of that, Amanda. Black box versus white box. Black box means you don't know anything about the network before you go in. White box means they tell you everything about it. Right? And in a black box scenario, you have to get and gather all this information for yourself. Identifying the host, supports, the services, and really the first thing you want to do is discover live hosts, IP addresses that are in use. We don't care about the ones that aren't in use. Open ports of live hosts. Discover services running on hosts. Discover vulnerabilities running on hosts. So let's talk about how we set this up, and then we'll get into the actual attack posture here. So there are many different parts of scanning from ICMP, TCP scanning, UDP scanning, depending on the types of services, programs that we want to use. TCP stealth scanning, UDP scanning, a full open scan, great, depending on the type of network you have. Sometimes you cannot do that depending on the security posture of the network you're attacking. You might need to use an inverse TCP flag scan or an XMS scan or fin scan, null scan, many different types of scans. Huge amounts of different types of scans. But let's talk about one of the tools, and we'll talk about how we get this started. So let's go in and have a look at getting set up with the Storm. So let's go to my desktop. Oops, wrong button here. Go to my desktop here. All right, the first thing that we want to do is on the Storm itself, we are going to do what's called an if config. Right, and the reason we're going to do this, let me go get that back here, and I think I need to do that. There we go. So I can see what I'm doing here. So we're going to go here and we're going to do an if config, which I already have open in a terminal. Right, I do an if config here, and you know what if config does, right? So what that's going to do is it's going to find my IP addresses for my interfaces on the Storm. And if I have put the Storm on the same network, or I have access, have ingress to my customer network, which I would have designed already in advance, right? If I have that capability, then I know what the IP address is for the Storm, and then from there I can open up PuTTY. Right, here's PuTTY right here, and in PuTTY, which is kind of hard to see on the screen, I imagine, but for those of you, how many of you have used PuTTY? Amanda, have a look. Raise hands if you've used PuTTY. See how many people that is? That's a lot of people, I imagine, who have used PuTTY. All right, and it's very, very usable. It's free. And then what I would do is set up port 22, and then I would SSH into my Storm, and this is my Storm right here. So if I do an ls, it shows me my structure of my drive. If I do an if config, shows me my interfaces, right? ETH0 and my WLAN interfaces. So this window that we're looking at right here is the Storm. Right, so that is the Storm itself. Another thing that I could do, let me just do a CLS here. What I did over here is I have a PowerShell window open on my local machine. And on PowerShell, what I did is I did a get-net IP address, which is a PowerShell command, which is similar to an ipconfig command. And it looks like I have a a lot. Okay, cool. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. As you see here, I can see that my Ethernet IP address is 10.1.10, right? .29. And if I look further, I see that my Wi-Fi is 10.1.10 also, right? So we're all that same 10.1.10 network. All these are other interfaces for the system. And I'm running VMware quite heavily on this system. So because now I can see that my Storm, if I look at its address, I'm going to go to let's go to WLAN 0, and we see that it is also on the 10.1.10 network. All right, so we can do work here. All right, so we have these devices on the same network. I can SSH in, as you see. Now I can begin to do scans on the network. So one of the scans that I really like doing is this scan right here, which is Nmap SNPE PA 2123803389. What is that? I bet you know what those are, right? So 21, which is what protocol? Yell it out. Yes, FTP, right? 23, which is what protocol? Yell it out. Telnet. That's right. got an HTTP here, 3389 RDP. So I'm going to go and find active systems that have these specific ports, right? And so that's what I'm going to do. Now, who is doing the scanning here? Who's doing the scanning? My storm is doing the scanning. So imagine the storm is off on another network somewhere. It's doing the scanning. I'm remote. I might be sitting in on my porch, sipping on a what am I drinking? I don't know, some type of nice beer. Anyway, and I hit enter here, and I run the little scan. So let's run the scan and see what I can find on this system. Take another sip of the fine beer from Arby's. Yes, very fine beer from Arby's. The best, only the best, right? Right. So, what do I find here? I find that we have a Netgear device, and that is a Wi-Fi router. Right. Look, we have a Xerox device at .11. That's going to be a printer. We have somebody's Apple PC. We have a Dell PC, a HP. This is my HP PC here. This is my Cisco switch, which, by the way, there's some really cool new hacks. And I have a TP-Link on the line too. Oh, look, there's a Roku. Let's hack Roku. There are lots of Roku hacks out there. Apple. Now, there are 10 hosts. Now, in this network, there could have been at least 254 hosts, but out of those, I've found 10 that I might be able to exploit. All right, just by going into the storm, having it behind on the network, or if I'm practicing, or it could be on my own network or my own small network. Like for instance, some of the things that I might want to scan, which I would pivot in order to be able to do this. But that would be what is on my VMware network, right? So I have a Windows Server 2003 out here. I have a Metasploitable. I don't know if you've heard of Metasploitable, but you can download it. It's a free tool that you can use to practice with Metasploit. Here's Parrot, Linux, and Kali. Right? All of these, they're on a separate network, which we'll need to pivot to in order to scan them, which is easy to do. When we get to that, I don't think we'll get to it in this class, but you can also bridge the networks, which we'll talk about, but I'm not going to do in this class also. We do that in our storm seminars. We bridge the networks. So the point is that we can begin by scanning the network and getting all of the hosts that are usable and make use of that. So Nmap has so many different ways of using it in nearly infinite combination that you can do just to find the hosts, get a network inventory, find out what types and versions are available, do some basic banner grabbing with Nmap, right? Then we could do ping sweeps, find those live hosts like I was talking about before. Attackers calculate subnet mask by using subnet mask calculators. Well, I'm a Cisco instructor, so who needs a calculator? You just know how to do subnetting in your head, or at least on paper, right? Very easy to do if you do it a lot. But if you don't do it a lot, those subnet calculators are great. Get that list of those live systems like I just showed you, and from that list, you'll be able to make sure that you are good to go. Now, we can also, if we want, we can also use a hping 3. Let's go back over here, and I've preloaded some of these commands, so it won't take too long typing them out. Where's my hping 3 command? There it is. So this is for the .51 address. If we look at the .51, that is my Cisco device. You know what? Let's, instead of doing the Cisco device, let's go to the Apple device. Let's go to .16 and see if there's a little website available or anything. Oh, look at that! So we see we get a reply back from the little Apple device. And then what I would do from here is do some banner grabbing on this device and see what I can find. So I can use hping3. So all the tools that we were looking at, whichever one of these tools in Kali that has a command line interface, we can use any of them, right? And then use those on the storm. This is the storm right here, this window. This is the storm. All right, so let's go back to look at some further items that we can do with the storm. Where we would go next is what we're going to look at, right? So we could do ICMP scanning, ACK scanning, which I was just doing for port 80, and trying to find out what systems have port 80. There are a variety of Nmap scans, a variety of hping3 commands that we can use for ICMP, ACK scanning, UDP scanning, collecting information about the initial sequence number. The ISNs are very important. If you're familiar with the way TCP talks with the SYN, ACK, and ACK, a three-way TCP handshake, you can get into that. The firewall timestamps, fin, push, and urge. One of the most important things that we find in the TCP datagram is there are lots of different flags, and we can do specific scans to find specific flags to know exactly what TCP is doing between a server and a client. We could plan for a man-in-the-middle attack. We can plan for many other types of attacks, getting that type of information. We intercept traffic. We could do a SYN flood, right? Most modern systems are not vulnerable to a SYN flood, but you never know. You might do a banner grab and find a system that is. And then with this, you can do that with hping. And a lot of times, especially if you have a blue team, do you know what a blue team is, right? So red team is the ethical hacker who's doing the attack. This could be within the company that has blue team and red team of employees, or it can be the security consultant versus the company, or it could be the security consultant versus themselves, right, to try to test that network. So the red team is attacking, the blue team is defending. Now, if you want to make sure that you can't be found out where you're coming from, you can use proxy chaining. I love proxy chaining. There are tools that allow you to do this in a fairly automated manner, so that when the device is finally attacked, so this web server down here, it looks like the attack is coming from 10.20.10.8, right? If you were to track back from that system, you would see that the attack actually came from 15.20.15.2, right? So, but really, it's a completely, there are 6 different links to this proxy chain, and in the end, it tries to obfuscate the path of the attacker. So this is definitely a very good red team methodology to obfuscate your tracks here. So we have everything from proxy switcher, proxy workbench. These are included on the storm, right? So we can run these from the storm, or we can run them independently, right? So with the storm also, let's go back a little bit more. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about with the storm, is you can use tools like sniffing. In fact, let's go ahead and talk about that in this next section. I remember that's why I put it in the next section, right? This is the storm in cybersecurity education. A lot of you are in cybersecurity education, right? There may be some of you who are purely on the business side. I want to get one of these things or know about it so that I can make money, right? Get a contract, or I already have contracts, and maybe I can use this as part of my array of tools that I would use, right? For a lot of you, you teach classes, go to classes, want to teach classes or whatever, or learn about security, cybersecurity. And so how would you use the storm in that education? First of all, just raw, and it depends on how the storm is sold. There are so many different ways that we sell the storm. One of them is we package course videos like CEH or CND videos with the storm. And it's hard to see this picture right here on your screen, I'm sure, but this is actually a 32-inch television screen. screen. And what I've done is to make that work, is I take my little stormy poo here, and I take off the back of it, and there is the heart of the storm. Right, that's the storm cloud right there. And see these little two wires right here that are in the little GPIO. What I do is I disconnect those, and what that does is it will cut power to the screen right here. So the screen no longer has power. I do this once I do that. I do this while the thing's turned off, of course. All right, and then from there, I take a little HDMI cable and plug it in to the storm, and then I could put it on my 55-inch TV or my 80-inch TV or my old CRT TV that has HDMI. Oh, those don't exist. And then get the full audio and everything, and get my lessons that I'm studying, and then use the storm itself to practice those lessons. One of the areas that we also very often sell with the storm is labs on demand, right? So let's have a look at that. I think let me make sure that I have that one of these guys running here. So let's go to the old desktop. And share the screen here. All right, so I'm going to resume this lab. It was closed. This to me is like way cool, and it's also an extremely nice way to make use of the storm. When we sell classes, even as we do it to third parties, we allow third parties to sell some of these types of classes in education and so on. When we do that, we often will sell the labs with it. Right, so let's have a look at how these labs work, and then what we want to do is say, how in the world would I use a storm for this, right? So, and again, Amanda, when I'm running up against time, you need to let me know. Otherwise, I'll just talk until the wee hours of the morning. No, actually, I won't talk that long. All right, so I'm at my 5-minute line. All right, let me hurry up here. I'm almost finished anyway. I kind of designed this for around the time that we had. So what you do is you follow these instructions down here, right? So how many of you have seen a lab like this? How many? Raise hands so that Amanda can see. How many of you have seen a lab like this? Maybe if you've taken a New Horizons class or others, we make use of some of the same stuff. Not many. Okay. Oh, cool. Then check this out. Look at these machines here. Look at these machines here. I have Windows 2016, 2012, Windows 10, Windows 8, Kali Linux, Ubuntu, and Android boxes here that are all put together in a network to help me practice my hacking skills. So let me see where do you want me to go? 2016 machine, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into this machine. I'm going to issue the Control-Alt-Delete. There it is. Now I'm going to issue the password. There it is. And I hit done down here, and it says launch Wireshark. So I go bada bing like this, right? And I can launch Wireshark on my storm, but more than likely I would launch Wireshark on my laptop or something like that because it's much easier to see when you're doing packet capture. And then I hit done here, and it says double click on Ethernet interface. So I do that, right? I hit done. Start capturing packets. Right now it tells me to go to another machine. So Windows 10. So I go here and I log in. I'm going to issue the issue the password, which is right here. Log into the Windows 10 machine. And then I'm going to make some noise on the Windows 10 machine. I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to go to a website called Moviescope, right? And I'm going to capture frames over here that are going to eventually lead me to see the password on that non-encrypted website. Yes, I can do that with the storm. I'm taking a class, I'm learning, and I do this exercise in the lab. Now I'm finished with the lab, and I can go to the storm and I can capture packets on the storm, and then I can export the file that I captured on Wireshark, and then examine it on another PC. Or I can just use the storm to practice those techniques. All right, so let's finish up here. Storm is an awesome tool. Even in third-party classes. Let's say I teach a class that's outside of EC Council, or you teach a class, and you have exercises for your students. They can use this storm to practice at home, practice in their own practice labs. So very cool stuff. And then for exam preparation, we have the CND or the CEH. The CEH Practical and ECSA Practical are exams that demand that you know how to use the major tools that are available for hacking. How do you practice those? What if you don't have these labs on demand? You have a storm, you can practice these tools. You can create your own lab to get to these exams, and create a virtual bridge, put together your virtual PCs along with your laptop or other physical PCs that you have, isolate that network, and set up remote access to it. So whether you are doing it for a lab for school, whether you're doing it for a test, like a CEH exam or a CEH practical, or whether you have customers out around the world for your hacking organization, you can use the storm for that also. So the storm is a hacking toolkit that is useful in so many different roles, and I could literally spend the rest of the, well, I was going to say the rest of the week, but it's kind of over, isn't it? So next week, I can spend the next whole week talking to you about the things that you can do with the storm. So that's all we have for a technical introduction to EC Council's Storm Penetration Testing Toolkit. All right. You're welcome. All right. So I hope everyone has a great afternoon. Do I pause for questions, or is that it, Amanda? Right on. That's it. Right on. Everybody take care. I'm out of here.